At a warm and bustling nursing home, a cold man arrives to visit his grandmother. He's a wealthy and powerful CEO, yet his life feels empty and lonely. But fate brings him here to meet a kind-hearted nurse, a woman who cares for his grandmother with genuine warmth. He often watches her chatting cheerfully and molding clay beside his grandmother, realizing he hasn't seen her so happy in years. What he doesn't know is that this woman won't just change his grandmother's life, she's about to change his own. Before we dive deeper into this story, tell me, where are you listening from? And don't forget to subscribe, because tomorrow I have a surprise waiting for you. The sleek glass elevator ascended 50 floors in mere moments, delivering Ethan Blackwood to the summit of the tower, emblazoned with his family's emblem. At 38, he commanded his domain CEO of Apex Innovations, his net worth soaring into stratospheric heights, cementing his status as one of the nation's most sought-after bachelors. His custom-tailored suit draped flawlessly over his athletic frame, his dark hair meticulously styled, not a single strand out of place. Mr. Blackwood, the executive committee awaits, his aide announced the instant he stepped into the corridor. Ethan offered a curtain nod, striding purposefully toward the boardroom. People scattered from his path, a familiar dance. It had always been this way. Folks either wanted a piece of him or kept a respectful distance. After enduring years of superficial alliances and calculated courtships, the solitude felt safer. The meeting unfolded as anticipated. Another rival enterprise absorbed another couple $100 million, bolstering the Apex empire. The committee members offered placid smiles and agreeable nods, but Ethan recognized them as mere sycophants, their sole concern being their year-end bonuses. "Outstanding work, Ethan," Eleanor Thorne purred afterward, her hand lingering on his arm a fraction too long. She was the newest addition to the board, sharp and ambitious. "We should celebrate this evening." Ethan's gaze flickered to her perfectly manicured nails against his sleeve, forcing a polite smile. Regrettably, prior engagement tonight, he lied, a fabrication he had perfected. He'd observed that look in women's eyes countless times, the calculation, the assessment of his influence, his fortune, his might. Never him. Another occasion, then. Eleanor conceded, her smile unfazed. His office provided an unparalleled panorama of the city, yet Ethan barely registered it anymore. He sat at his desk, sifting through reports and emails until his personal phone chimed. "Mr. Blackwood, this is Serenity, Shaw's Haven. I'm calling regarding your grandmother, Eleanor Vance." Ethan's fingers tightened around the device. "What has transpired?" "Nothing critical, sir, but the physician has adjusted her regimen, and we felt you should be informed. Also, she's been asking for you." A wave of regret hit Ethan. He hadn't visited in over a month. His grandmother was the sole person who had ever truly loved him, not his assets. And now the dear old woman was tucked away in a care home, while Ethan constructed an empire that held little meaning for either of them. "I'll stop by tomorrow," Ethan stated. "That would be delightful. Your grandmother will be thrilled." After ending the call, Ethan stared at his digital calendar, packed with back-to-back commitments for weeks. He opened a drawer and retrieved an aged photograph himself. Attend, sitting on a sun-dappled dock with his grandmother, both holding small ceramic projects, smiling brightly. That was before his parents passed, before the family enterprise consumed his existence, before he understood the world's true chill. He made a decision, phoning his assistant. "Clear my schedule for tomorrow afternoon." The following day, Ethan drove himself to Serenity Shores. His sleek, electric luxury sedan seemed conspicuously out of place among the modest vehicles in the parking area. The haven was costly. He ensured his grandmother received nothing but the best. Yet it still felt like a betrayal to leave her here. At the reception desk, a kind-faced woman looked up. "Mr. Blackwood, we weren't expecting you so early. Is that an issue?" His tone was sharper than intended. "Not at all. she replied, unperturbed by his brusqueness. Your grandmother is in the crafting studio with Julian. Julian, one of our compassionate aides. She's been a gem with your grandmother. Ethan followed the corridor to the studio, slowing when he heard laughter, his grandmother's laughter. He hadn't heard that sound in years. The studio was bright and airy, with large windows overlooking a vibrant courtyard. And there, meticulously molding clay at a table, was his grandmother, Eleanor Vance. Once a formidable and elegant woman, now at 85, she was slightly stooped, her movements careful, but she was smiling. Beside her, assisting gently, stood a young woman in simple blue scrubs, her hands subtly guiding her. She had warm olive skin and neat dark curls pulled back in a practical bun. She wasn't the usual polished beauty Ethan's world presented, but her gaze snagged on her genuine warmth. And then I told the gallery owner, "Sir, I may be elderly, but I'm certainly not too frail to recognize a fair appraisal." Eleanor finished her anecdote, and the young woman, Julian, laughed with genuine delight. "You truly said that, Miss Eleanor, you're too much. When you've lived as long as I have, you earned the right to speak your mind," Eleanor replied, then looked up and saw Ethan. Her face brightened even more. "Ethan, my dear boy." Julian looked up, her smile dimming slightly as her eyes met Ethan's. There was no glint of recognition, no flicker of awe at his presence beyond a visitor for his patient. It was a novel experience for Ethan, who was accustomed to immediate recognition. "Grandma," Ethan said, approaching and embracing the old woman gently. "You came," Eleanor said, patting his back. "I was just telling Julian about the time you and I crafted that monster mosaic for the community center. You've been holding out on me, Miss Eleanor," Julianne said with a warm smile. "You never mentioned your grandson was an artisan." "I haven't done pottery in years," Ethan corrected. "That's a pity," Julianne observed. And there was no artifice in her voice, just simple honesty. Miss Elelana talks about those creative sessions as if they were the best days of her life. Ethan felt another pang of guilt. They were good days. "Well," Julian said, "I'll leave you two to catch up. Miss Eleanor, remember to use your hand brace if your fingers ache." She turned to Ethan with a professional smile. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Blackwood." As she walked away, Ethan found himself watching her. She moved with purpose, stopping to offer a kind word to an elderly man in a wheelchair, his face lighting up as he knelt to speak to him at eye level. "She's something special, isn't she?" Eleanor said, following Ethan's gaze. "The aide, I suppose. She seems competent." Eleanor chuckled. "Competent, Julian Reed is the only one in this place who sees me, truly sees me beyond the medical charts. She brings me my preferred teas, remembers how I like my stories, and listens to my old tales as if they're actually compelling." Ethan guided his grandmother to a cozy armchair by the window. "I should come more often." "Yes, you should," Eleanor agreed without accusation. "But I understand you're busy running the company." "The company that you built?" Ethan reminded her. Eleanor waved her hand dismissively. "I crafted this legacy for our kin, not as a substitute for connection. Your grandfather would be heartbroken to see how you've closed yourself off." Ethan winced. His grandfather had died when he was a teenager, and his loss had been devastating for both him and his grandmother. "I'm not remote," Ethan insisted. "I'm dedicated to accumulating more wealth." Before Ethan could respond, his phone rang, his CFO. "I need to take this." Eleanor sighed. "Of course you do." Ethan stepped away, handling a minor crisis that could have waited. When he returned, his grandmother was deep in conversation with Julian again. She had brought her a cup of chamomile and was showing her something on a tablet. "Look at this," Eleanor called. "Julian is showing me pictures of her urban sanctuary project. They're fostering creativity for local youth." Julian looked embarrassed. "It's just a small endeavor some friends and I started." "She's being modest," Eleanor said proudly, as if her accomplishments were hers to boast about. "She works here full-time volunteers at that sanctuary, and she's taking classes to become a social worker." "That's impressive," Ethan said, surprised at the sincerity in his own voice. Julian shrugged. Just trying to make a difference where I can. She checked her watch. I should get back to work. Your grandmother has physical therapy in half an hour, Mr. Blackwood. Ethan, he corrected automatically. Julian nodded with a polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Ethan. As she walked away, Eleanor chuckled. She doesn't seem to warm to you much. What? Why wouldn't she like me? She doesn't even know me. Precisely. You're just another wealthy relative who makes infrequent appearances. Eleanor's eyes twinkled with mischief. She's got your number, my boy. That's ridiculous, Ethan muttered, but he found himself glancing in the direction Julian had gone. They spent another hour together, Elena sharing stories about her fellow residents and the daily routine at Serenity Shores. When it was time for her therapy session, Ethan walked her to the recreation room. Come back soon, Elena said, gripping Ethan's hand with surprising strength. And next time, bring your pottery tools. There's a studio here. Nothing like our old one, but the company makes all the difference. I will, Ethan promised, meaning it. On his way out, he passed the reception desk again, where Julian was updating some files on a computer. Without overthinking it, he stopped. Excuse me, Julian. Julian looked up, surprised. Yes, Mr. Blackwood. Ethan, he corrected again. I wanted to thank you for taking such good care of my grandmother. I'm just doing my job, Julian said, but then softened. But you're welcome. Your grandmother is a wonderful woman. Yes, she is, Ethan agreed. Tell me about this urban sanctuary. She seemed very impressed. Julian's expression transformed as she spoke about the project, his passion evident. We converted a derelict lot in my neighborhood. It's not much yet, but we've got art workshops, music lessons, and tutoring sessions. The plan is to provide a creative outlet and support for local youth who can't access it. That's admirable, Ethan said. Do you need funding? Julian's smile faded slightly. We're doing fine, thanks. It's a community effort. Funds help, but sincere effort and sweat equity matter most. Ethan wasn't used to having his offers of financial assistance rebuffed. It was typically the first thing people wanted from him. Well, if you change your mind, Julian finished politely, effectively ending the conversation by turning back to her computer. Brushed off by a humble aide, Ethan found himself both piqued and fascinated as he walked to his car. That evening, instead of returning to the office as planned, Ethan went home to his penthouse apartment. The space was immaculately designed, all clean lines and modern art, but devoid of personal touches. He poured himself a scotch and walked to the floor to ceiling windows overlooking the city lights. His mind kept returning to the care home, to his grandmother's happiness at seeing her, to Julian Reed's genuine smile when he spoke about his project, and how that smile had dimmed when she looked at Ethan. On impulse, he opened his laptop and searched for urban youth initiatives in the city. There were several, but after cross-referencing with information about community outreach, he found what was likely Julian's project in a vibrant urban district across town. The website was simple but effective, with pictures of volunteers leading art classes and children learning new skills. There she was in one photo, laughing as she helped a young boy paint a mural, her curls escaping from her bun paint, smudged on her cheek. She radiated a genuine spirit, a quality often absent in Ethan's polished circles. His phone rang, breaking his concentration. It was Eleanor Thorne again. Ethan, some of us are having drinks at Celeste Lounge. Join us. We're celebrating the Nexus merger. He almost declined automatically, but then thought of the evening ahead. Him alone in his pristine, empty apartment, with only his thoughts for company. I'll be there in 30 minutes, he said. Celeste Lounge was an exclusive rooftop bar frequented by the city's elite. Eleanor had secured a prime table with a view of the harbor, surrounded by the usual crowd of executives and socialites. She greeted Ethan with a kiss that lingered near the corner of his mouth. We weren't sure you'd come, She set her hand on his arm again. "You've been so unavailable lately." "I had some personal matters to attend to," Ethan said, accepting a glass of champagne from a passing waiter. "Nothing serious, I hope," Eleanor said, but her eyes suggested she wasn't particularly concerned. "My grandmother." Ethan found himself saying, "I visited her today." "How charming," she replied, her tone making it clear she found it anything but interesting. Now, about the next acquisition target. The evening proceeded predictably: business talk, subtle flirtations, everyone trying to position themselves advantageously. Ethan played his part, discussing strategies and accepting compliments on the latest merger, but he felt oddly disconnected from it all. At one point he found himself at the bar, ordering another drink, when his CFO, Victor Sterling, joined him. "Eleanor has her eye on you," Victor commented. "Smart move. Her family connections could be useful for the European expansion." Ethan looked across the room at Eleanor, who was watching him while pretending to listen to another conversation. "Is that your view on partnerships? Just another calculated maneuver? In our world, what else would they be? Our kind isn't exactly prone to discovering soulmates over a casual brew." The comment stayed with Ethan as he made his excuses and left earlier than expected. In his car, instead of heading home, he found himself driving toward the address he'd seen on the Urban Sanctuary website. It was nearly 1000 p.m. when he parked near the fenced lot. The sanctuary was dark and locked up, of course. What had he expected? That Julian would be there working late by moonlight? That he'd have some romantic movie moment where he could offer to help and show him he wasn't just another rich jerk ridiculous? He muttered to herself, about to drive away, when he noticed a small group of people leaving a building across the street. Even in the dim streetlight, he recognized Julian's silhouette. She was laughing with a middle-aged woman and a young woman. They hugged before parting ways. Julian heading toward a modest hatchback parked further down the block. Ethan slumped in his seat, feeling foolish. This wasn't his world. He had no reason to be here observing his grandmother's aide, because she treated her with something other than fawning admiration or calculated interest. The next morning, Ethan arrived at his office earlier than usual, determined to focus on work and forget about his strange preoccupation with Julian Reed. But by midday, he found himself calling Serenity Shores. "I'd like to visit my grandmother again tomorrow," he told the receptionist, "and I was wondering, what time does Julian Reed usually work?" "M. Reed works mornings until 3 p.m. most days," the woman replied. "I'm sure, miss. Eleanor will be thrilled to see you again so soon." Ethan hung up, annoyed with himself for asking, yet already rearranging his schedule for the next day. That night, he dreamed of working pottery with his grandmother, the clay cool on their hands, the designs stretching endlessly before them. But when he turned to look at the studio entrance, it wasn't empty as it had been in reality. Julian was there, a smile lighting her face, a picnic laid out on a blanket, waiting for them to return. He woke up unsettled, wondering what was happening to him. One brief meeting with a woman who clearly wasn't impressed by her, and suddenly she was dreaming about her. It made no sense, unless what captivated him wasn't her charm or standing, but precisely her disinterest in those things. "I'm losing my mind," Ethan muttered, getting ready for another day of business deals and boardroom politics. But even as he said it, he found himself looking forward to tomorrow's visit more than he had anticipated anything in a very long time. Ethan arrived at Serenity Shores the next day, just after lunch. He'd brought his old pottery wheel as promised to his grandmother, though he felt slightly ridiculous carrying it through the care home's elegant lobby. The same receptionist from yesterday smiled at him. "2 visits in 2 days. Mr. Blackwood, your grandmother will be thrilled. Is my grandmother in the crafting studio again today?" The receptionist's smile turned knowing. "Miss Reed is helping with a creative writing class right now. Your grandmother should be there too." Ethan followed her directions to a bright room with large windows overlooking the garden. About a dozen residents sat at tables with various art supplies spread before them. His grandmother was near the window, concentrating intensely on a short story. And there was Julian moving between tables, offering encouragement and assistance. She wore the same practical scrubs as yesterday, her hair again pulled back. Yet somehow she stood out in the room like a beam of sunlight. Try to imagine the scent she was saying to an elderly man. That's it. See how the words flow now. It's beautiful, Mr. Chen. She looked up and saw Ethan standing in the doorway. Surprise flickered across her face before she smiled politely and approached her. Back so soon, Mr. Blackwood? She asked. Your grandmother will be happy to see you. I promised him we'd work on pottery, Ethan said awkwardly, holding up his small wheel. And please call me Ethan. Julian nodded but didn't repeat his name this time. The creative writing class ends in about 15 minutes. Would you like to join while you wait? We have an empty seat. The idea of sitting down to write alongside elderly residents was so far outside Ethan's comfort zone that his first instinct was to refuse, but his grandmother had spotted him and was waving enthusiastically. I haven't written creatively since elementary school, Ethan admitted, as Julian led him to the table. No time like the present to start again, he said with an encouraging smile that seemed more genuine than yesterday's. We are crafting memories today, moments that mean something special. Ethan sat beside his grandmother, who was weaving a tale of a summer spent by a lake in flowing, slightly shaky prose. Willow Creek Lake, Eleanor explained proudly. Remember that cabin we used to rent every summer? I remember, Ethan said softly, looking at the simple story that somehow captured the essence of those golden childhood days. Julian placed a blank notebook and a pen in front of him. Your turn. Under the curious gazes of his grandmother and several residents, Ethan picked up the pen. He felt strangely vulnerable sitting here in his expensive suit while trying to remember how to form a basic narrative. I'm not very artistic, he muttered. It's not about crafting perfection, Julian offered softly. It's about reclaiming forgotten joys. With hesitant strokes, Ethan began to write about the dock where he and his grandfather had spent countless hours fishing. His technique was clumsy, the descriptions basic, but as the story took shape, so did the memories, the smell of the lake, the sound of his grandfather's laughter, the feeling of simple happiness. When the class ended, Julian collected the notebooks to review them. We'll bind them into a collection next week, she told the residents. They're all wonderful. Eleanor stood carefully, accepting her walker. Ready for some pottery, my boy? Absolutely, Ethan said, surprised to realize he was actually looking forward to it. As they prepared to leave the art room, Ethan found himself turning to Julian. Would you like to join us if you're not too busy? That is, the invitation surprised even himself. Julian looked equally surprised. That's thoughtful, but I have other residents to attend to, she said. Maybe another time. Eleanor chuckled as they walked slowly toward the crafting room. You're misreading the signs there. Ethan, what are you talking about? I may be old, but I'm not blind. You're interested in Julian. Ethan felt an unfamiliar heat rise to his face. I was just being polite. In the 38 years I've known you, just being polite has never involved inviting someone to join your personal time. At the crafting room, they found a bench in the shade. Ethan helped his grandmother sit comfortably before preparing their clay and setting up the wheel. She's a different sort than the people you typically frequent, Eleanor continued, clearly enjoying her grandson's discomfort. I hardly know her, Ethan protested. Exactly my point. The ones you date, do you ever truly know them? Or do they just fit a certain mold? Beautiful, sophisticated, connected to the right people? Ethan didn't answer, watching his grandmother's hands deftly mold the clay. His grandmother was right, of course. His relationships had always been superficial, more about social standing than genuine connection. You know, Eleanor said after a comfortable silence, your grandfather was a street musician when I first encountered him. Ethan looked up in surprise. What I thought, Grandpa was from a prominent family. Eleanor laughed. That's the story your mother preferred. The truth is, I stopped at a small cafe after a difficult meeting. He was playing a melancholic tune, and I told him to stop looking like the world had ended. By the time he finished that piece, I knew he was special. Why haven't you ever told me this? Your parents had certain ideas about our family's image. After they died, it didn't seem important to correct the story. Eleanor's eyes grew distant with memory. He never cared for the enterprise or the riches. His heart was for people just as Julian's is. They worked in silence for a while, neither creating a masterpiece, but both enjoying the peaceful moment. Eventually, Eleanor's energy began to wane, and Ethan helped her back to her room. "Will you come again tomorrow?" Eleanor asked, hopefully. "I have meetings in the morning, but I'll come in the afternoon," Ethan promised. As he was leaving, he passed the courtyard, where Julian was helping an elderly man with a walking exercise. "Leaving already?" she asked when she saw him. "Grandma got tired, but we had a good time with the pottery." "Did you create anything?" "Just memories," Ethan said, surprising himself with the sentiment. Julian smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. "Those are the best kind." "I wanted to ask you," Ethan began, but was interrupted by his phone buzzing. "Eleanor Thorne." He silenced it. "Sorry about that. Important business?" Julian asked, his expression closing slightly. "Nothing that can't wait." Ethan put the phone away. "I noticed your urban sanctuary project could use some proper art supplies. I'd like to help." Her eyebrows rose. "Did you investigate me, Mr. Blackwood?" The use of his formal name again wasn't lost on him. "I was curious about the project my grandmother mentioned." "And you immediately thought of throwing money at it," Julian said, not unkindly, but with a directness that few people ever used with him. "Not just money," Ethan said. "I'd like to help personally now." Julian looked genuinely surprised. "You want to work at a community art project? Is that so hard to believe?" "Honestly, yes." She gestured at Ethan's perfectly tailored suit. "You don't strike me as someone who relishes a bit of grime. Maybe there's more beneath this exterior than you perceive," Ethan said, holding his gaze. "A flicker of something interest, perhaps?" Crossed Julian's face before she shook her head. "The sanctuary workday is Saturday morning, 8 to noon. If you're serious, you can come, but leave your checkbook at home." Before he could respond, she was called away by another staff member. Ethan watched him go, already mentally rearranging his Saturday schedule. The rest of the week passed in a blur of meetings and contracts. Ethan visited his grandmother daily, always timing his visits during Julian's shifts. Each day, he learned a little more about her, that she lived with her younger brother, that she sang in a community choir, that she had a soft spot for artisanal shortbread, that the care home's kitchen staff made special for her. Eleanor watched these interactions with amused interest, often finding excuses to leave them alone together. "Julian, would you mind showing Ethan the new poetry books while I rest my eyes for a minute?" On Friday afternoon, Ethan arrived to find his grandmother in bed with a slight fever. "Nothing serious," the nurse assured him. "Just a touch of a cold. We're monitoring her closely." Ethan sat with Eleanor, who drifted in and out of sleep. After an hour, Julian appeared at the door with a tray. "I brought her favorite tea," she said softly. "How is she doing?" "The same. They say not to worry, but it's normal to worry about people we love," Julian said, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. The simple touch of comfort was so unexpected that Ethan found himself at a loss for words. "Thank you for being here for her," he continued. "It means more than you know. I should have been here more all along," Ethan admitted. "I've been so focused on running the company." "You're here now," Julian said. "That's what matters." As she turned to leave, Ethan spoke up. "I'll see you tomorrow at the sanctuary." She paused at the door. 800 a.m. sharp. "Wear attire you're not precious about staining, if such things exist in your wardrobe." Saturday morning found Ethan standing awkwardly at the entrance to the urban sanctuary, wearing the most casual clothes he owned, dark jeans that still looked expensive, and a simple button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He'd even stopped for coffee on the way, picking up an extra cup with the vague hope of earning brownie points. The sanctuary was already bustling with activity. Children ran between art stations, adults were preparing canvases and mixing paints, and a group of teenagers was constructing what looked like a new sculpture. Ethan didn't see Julian at first and wondered if she'd worked the night shift and wouldn't be coming. Then he heard her laugh, that same warm, genuine sound that had first caught his attention at Serenity Shores. She emerged from a small shed, carrying trays of paint supplies, wearing faded jeans with holes at the knees, a loose t-shirt, and a bandana holding back her curls. He spotted her and did a double take, clearly surprised she had actually shown up. Making her way over, she balanced the trays against her hip. "You came," she said, sounding impressed despite himself. "I said I would." She held out the coffee. "I brought this for you. Thanks." He shifted the trays to accept the cup. "How's your grandmother today?" "Better. Her fever broke overnight." Ethan took one of the trays from her. "Where do these go?" Julian led him to an empty easel station. "These are acrylic paints. They need to be prepared with a bit of water." She demonstrated the technique, mixing colors, gently dabbing the brush onto a canvas carefully. Ethan watched attentively before trying himself. His first attempt was clumsy, the brush strokes uneven. "A commendable first attempt," Julian encouraged. "Perhaps less concern for your trousers, more for the brush's embrace." "These jeans are already a lost cause," Ethan said, noticing the paint smudges on his knees. Strangely, he didn't mind. They worked side by side, preparing all the paints. Ethan's technique improved with each one, and he found himself enjoying the simple, purposeful work. Around them, the sanctuary buzzed with community energy, people of all ages working together, sharing tools and advice, laughing and chatting. "How did all this get started?" Ethan asked, as they moved on to preparing canvases. 3 years ago, this was just a derelict lot collecting trash," Julian explained. "My brother, Marcus, and I grew up 2 blocks from here, and we always talked about how the neighborhood needed more creative outlets. When the city offered community art grants, we applied. You built all this in 3 years with a lot of help," she said, gesturing around. "Everyone here volunteers their time. The art we create goes to local families, and the workshops are free. Last year, we produced almost 1,500 creative projects." "That's impressive," Ethan said sincerely. "It's not running a multinational corporation," Julian said with a shrug. "But it nurtures minds." Ethan looked around at the thriving sanctuary. "This work? Perhaps it holds more weight than my own ventures." Julian studied him curiously. "You really mean that, don't you?" Before he could respond, they were interrupted by a teenage girl. "Julian, we need help with the mural section. The colors aren't blending right." "I'll be right there," Julian said, then turned back to Ethan. "Duty calls. Can you finish these canvases?" "I think I can handle it," he said with more confidence than he felt. For the next 2 hours, Ethan worked steadily preparing canvases, then helping a group of children with a pottery wheel. His shirt was dirty, his hands were caked with paint, and he had a sunburn developing on the back of his neck. But he felt more satisfied than he had after closing billion-dollar deals. When lunch break was called, everyone gathered around a long table set up under a tree. People had brought dishes to share homemade salads, sandwiches, cookies, and pictures of lemonade. Ethan felt awkward having brought nothing, but Julian handed him a plate. "First times, get a free pass," he said. "Next time, bring something to share." Next time. The casual implication that he would return warmed him in a way he hadn't expected. "Is that Ethan Blackwood?" A man about Julian's age approached them, eyes wide with recognition. "Marcus, this is Ethan," Julian said. "Ethan, my brother Marcus, your brother who handles the social media for the sanctuary." Ethan asked, remembering the website. That's me, Marcus confirmed, still looking at him with open curiosity. So, you're Eleanor's grandson. Julian's told me about you. All good things, I hope, Ethan said, glancing at Julian, who suddenly seemed very interested in his sandwich. Interesting things, Marcus corrected with a mischievous smile. Like how you show up at Serenity Shores every day now always during my sister's shift, Marcus Julian warned. What? I'm just making conversation. Marcus turned back to Ethan. So tech mogul on weekdays, urban artisan on weekends? That's quite the contrast. I'm just helping out, Ethan said modestly. Well, we appreciate it, Marcus said. I've got to help with the sculpture demonstration, but we should talk more later. I have so many questions. As Marcus walked away, Julian groaned. I apologize for my brother. His candor is unbridled. I like him, Ethan said. He reminds me of you. Marcus is the outgoing one. I'm the reserved sister. You reserved? Ethan chuckled. You challenged me the moment we spoke. Julian looked embarrassed. About that, I might have judged you too quickly. Based on the suit, the car, the way you barely looked at the other residents when you visited, Ethan couldn't deny any of that. Fair points. I haven't exactly been grandson of the year, but you've been here every day this week. Julian acknowledged that counts for something. After lunch, the work continued. Ethan helped build a new display case for the finished artworks, taking direction from a retired carpenter who seemed unimpressed by Ethan's status, but appreciative of his willingness to learn. By the end of the day, Ethan was exhausted, but strangely energized. As people began to pack up, he helped. Julian stored tools in the shed. Will your grandmother be expecting you today? She asked. I told her I'd come by this evening, Ethan said. But I have time if you need more help here. Julian hesitated. Actually, I was heading to visit her, too. I sometimes stop by on my days off to bring her books. We could go together if you want. The idea of spending more time with Julian, even at Serenity Shores, was appealing. I'd like that. Great. Let me just clean up a bit first. I can't show up looking like this. While Julian went to wash up, Marcus cornered Ethan by the sanctuary gate. So, what are your intentions with my sister? He asked without preamble. Excuse me? You've been visiting your grandmother every day during Julian's shifts for a week, and now you show up here on a Saturday when you could be on a yacht or whatever billionaires do on weekends. I wanted to help with the sanctuary, Ethan said, trying to sound casual. Marcus gave him a skeptical look. Right. And it has nothing to do with the fact that you're interested in Julian. Is it that obvious? Only to everyone with eyes, Marcus said with a laugh. Look, Julian is the best person I know. She works too hard, cares too much, and never puts herself first. If you're just looking for a challenge because she didn't swoon at your fancy car, it's not like that, Ethan interrupted, surprised by his own sincerity. She's different. Different? How? Ethan thought about it. She truly observes people, not their standing or potential utility. She saw my grandmother as a person with stories and value, not just another elderly patient. And she looked at me like I was just another visitor, not Ethan. Blackwood CEO. Marcus's expression softened. That's Julian, but be gentle with her affections. All right. She doesn't often open up. Before Ethan could respond, Julian returned, her face freshly washed and her curls tamed somewhat. Ready to go? She asked. The drive to Serenity Shores was comfortable with Julian sharing stories about the sanctuary's early days and the challenges they'd overcome. When they arrived, they found Eleanor in the common room playing dominoes with another resident, Ethan and Julian too. Eleanor's face lit up. What a wonderful surprise. We brought you something, Julian said, producing a paper bag. Inside was a still warm loaf of rosemary focaccia, made with the first herbs from the sanctuary. Eleanor took the bread with genuine delight. You two are spoiling an old woman. As they sat together, Eleanor beaming at both of them, Ethan found himself watching. Julian, the way she listened attentively to his grandmother's stories, her gentle laugh, the kindness in her eyes, all of it drew her in more powerfully than any attraction he'd ever felt before. And, for the first time in years, Ethan Blackwood, who could acquire almost anything in the world, found himself craving something beyond financial acquisition, Julian Reed's trust. What he didn't know was that earning it would require more from him than he'd ever given anyone, and might cost him everything he thought he valued. Over the next few weeks, Ethan established a new routine. Mornings were still dedicated to Apex innovations, but his afternoons often found him at Serenity Shores with his grandmother. Saturdays were spent at the urban sanctuary where he had become a regular volunteer. And through it all, Julian was the center of gravity that kept pulling him back. "You missed the board meeting yesterday?" Eleanor Thorne commented one morning, leaning against the doorframe of his office. "Victor had to cover for you." "Victor? I had a family commitment," Ethan said, not looking up from his computer. "With your grandmother again?" Eleanor entered the office uninvited, perching on the edge of his desk. "You've been spending a lot of time at that care home lately." Ethan finally looked up. "Is there a problem with that?" "Not at all. It's just unexpected." She studied him with calculating eyes. "You've changed, Ethan. People do that sometimes. It's more than that. You used to be focused, driven. Now you're delegating key meetings, leaving early." She leaned closer. "Some of the board members are talking." "Let them talk," Ethan said, though a flicker of concern crossed his mind. "The company is doing fine for now, but success requires constant attention." She placed her hand on his, her voice softening. "I'm just looking out for you, Ethan. We've known each other a long time." "I appreciate the concern," Ethan said, gently removing his hand. "But my personal life is my own business." Eleanor's smile tightened. "Of course, just remember who your real friends are." As she left, she added, "Oh, and don't forget the annual benefit gala next weekend. As major donors, the company expects both of us to be there." The charity gala. Ethan had completely forgotten about it. It was an annual event that Apex Innovation sponsored, raising money for children's art programs. In previous years, Ethan had viewed it as a necessary publicity opportunity. This year, he found himself wondering if the money actually reached the children it was meant to help. That afternoon, Ethan arrived at Serenity Shores to find Julian helping his grandmother into a wheelchair. "What's happening?" Ethan asked, concerned. "Nothing to worry about," Eleanor assured him. "Just going for some X-rays. Doctor wants to check my wrist after that slip last week." Ethan frowned. "What slip? Why wasn't I informed?" "It was very minor," Julian explained. Miss Eleanor slipped in the bathroom, but caught herself on the handrail. She wasn't hurt, but Dr. Peterson likes to be thorough. "I didn't want to worry you," Eleanor added. "You're busy enough." The word stung. Had he been so absent from his grandmother's life that Eleanor felt she couldn't reach out, even for something as serious as a fall? "I'm never too busy for you," Ethan said firmly. "I want to know about these things, no matter how small they seem." Eleanor patted his hand. "I know, son. Now, would you like to come with us to radiology? It's a thrill a minute down there." Despite her attempt at humor, Ethan could see his grandmother was in some discomfort. He walked alongside the wheelchair as Julian pushed it gently through the corridors. "How are you feeling, really?" Ethan asked Eleanor when Julian stepped away to speak with a nurse. "Old," Eleanor admitted with a sigh. "The body betrays you piece by piece, but having you visit so often, that's been the best medicine." Ethan squeezed her shoulder. "I should have been here more all along." "Better late than never," Eleanor said. "And if it took Julian to bring you around more often, well, I'm not complaining." Ethan felt his face warm. "Is it that obvious?" "To me, yes. To her, she's too humble to believe someone like you would be interested in someone like her." "Someone like me?" Ethan echoed, frowning. "Rich, powerful, surrounded by stunning socialites." Eleanor shrugged. You have to admit you two come from different worlds. Before Ethan could respond, Julian returned. They're ready for you, Miss Eleanor. It should only take about 30 minutes. I'll be here waiting, Ethan promised. As the radiology technician wheeled Eleanor away, Ethan and Julian were left alone in the waiting area. So, Ethan began, my company sponsors an annual charity gala next weekend. It raises money for children's art programs. That sounds worthwhile, Julian said. I was wondering if you'd like to attend with me. Julian looked startled. Hey, gala. I don't exactly have gala-appropriate clothes in my closet. That's not a problem. I could buy me something. She finished, her expression cooling. No, thank you. Ethan realized his mistake immediately. That's not what I meant. Julian interrupted gently. What exactly are we doing, Ethan? What do you mean this? He gestured between them. You visiting every day, volunteering at the sanctuary, now inviting me to fancy events. What's the trajectory? The direct question caught him off guard. In his world, people rarely spoke so plainly about intentions. I enjoy spending time with you, he said carefully. And I enjoy your company too, Julian admitted. But we come from completely different worlds. You run a multinational corporation. I work at a care home and volunteer at a community art project. Why does that matter? Because it does, he said simply. Your world is full of people like that woman who called you twice during our last lunch together. Who was she? Eleanor. She's just a board member. Just a board member who calls you on weekends and whose name makes you frown when it appears on your phone. Ethan hadn't realized Julian had noticed that. It's complicated, and that's my point. Julian said, your life is complicated in ways mine isn't. You move in spheres I've only glimpsed. That doesn't mean we can't. What date? And then what, you tire of slumming it with the humble aid? Or worse, you try to remold me into your ideal. I would never do that, Ethan protested. Julian's expression softened. Maybe not intentionally, but it's hard to bridge worlds that different. Before Ethan could argue further, the doors opened and Eleanor was wheeled back out. All done, Eleanor announced. And I only complained a little bit. He was a model patient, the technician confirmed with a smile. The conversation with Julian remained unfinished as they returned. Eleanor to her room. Ethan stayed for dinner, the three of them eating together in Eleanor's room, talking about everything except the question that hung between Ethan and Julian. When it was time to leave, Ethan walked. Julian, to her car. About the gala, he said. Forget I mentioned it, but I'd still like to see you outside of Serenity Shores in the sanctuary sometime. Just dinner, maybe. Nothing fancy. Julian hesitated, then smiled slightly. I get off at 300 on Thursday. There's a little cafe near the sanctuary that makes great sandwiches. Thursday at 3,000, Ethan confirmed, trying not to sound too eager. I'll be there. That night, Ethan found himself unable to sleep, Julian's words playing in his mind. Did he really think Ethan was just slumming it? That he'd tried to change him? The thought bothered him deeply. The next morning, Victor Sterling, his CFO, was waiting in his office with a concerned expression. We need to talk about the European expansion, Victor said without preamble. The board is getting nervous about your level of engagement. I've reviewed all the proposals, Ethan said defensively. Reviewing isn't leading, Victor countered. Eleanor brought some concerns to me yesterday. Of course she did, Ethan thought. What concerns exactly? That you're distracted, that your priorities have shifted. Victor hesitated. There is talk about whether you're still the right person to lead this company. The implied threat wasn't subtle. The board could move to replace him if they lost confidence in his leadership. I have a personal life now, Ethan said. That doesn't mean I'm any less committed to Apex Innovations. Then prove it, Victor said. The European expansion needs your full attention, and so does the annual benefit gala. Eleanor mentioned you haven't even confirmed your attendance yet. I'll be there, Ethan assured him. Now, if that's all. After Victor left, Ethan sat back in his chair, a heaviness settling in his chest. For the first time in his career, his position felt threatened, and for the first time, he wasn't sure if he cared as much as he should. Thursday afternoon came quickly. Ethan left the office early, changing from his suit into more casual clothes, jeans, and a simple button-down shirt before heading to the cafe near the sanctuary. He spotted Julian already seated at an outdoor table, wearing an open-collared linen shirt that was a departure from his usual scrubs or project clothes. Her curly hair was loose around her shoulders, and she was reading a book so absorbed that she didn't notice her approaching. "Is this seat taken?" Ethan asked. Julian looked up, a warm smile spreading across her face. "I was saving it for a billionaire, but I suppose you'll do." Ethan laughed, feeling lighter than he had all week as he sat across from her. "What are you reading?" Julian showed him the cover, a novel about a community coming together to save a local landmark. Marcus says, "I have predictable taste in books, always about people making a difference in their communities. There are worse themes to enjoy." Ethan said they ordered sandwiches and iced tea, the conversation flowing easily as Julian told him about his day at Serenity, Shores, and the new resident who had moved in. "Mr. Collins is a retired music teacher," she explained. "He brought his cello and played for everyone in the common room today. Your grandmother loved it." "How is she doing?" Ethan asked. "After the x-rays. I mean, the results came back clear, but Dr. Peterson wants her to use a wrist brace for a while, just to be safe." Julian tilted her head. "You seem stressed today. Everything okay?" Ethan hesitated, then decided on honesty. "The board is questioning my commitment to the company. Apparently, having a personal life makes me less dedicated in their eyes." "That seems unfair," Julian said. "Everyone deserves a life outside of work." Not everyone has billions of dollars resting on their decisions," Ethan said, then immediately regretted how it sounded. "I'm sorry that came out wrong." To her surprise, Julian laughed. "No, you're right. I can't pretend to understand the pressure you're under. If I make a mistake at work, a resident might get the wrong dessert flavor. If you make a mistake, people lose jobs, stock prices fall, the economy suffers." Ethan finished grimly. "At least, that's what the board would have me believe." "Is that why you've been so driven all these years? Because you feel that responsibility?" No one had ever asked him that before. "Partly," Ethan admitted, "and partly because I didn't have anything else after my parents died. The corporation consumed my being, my very essence. Now I question that foundation." Ethan met his eyes. "Encountering you, dedicating time to Grandma, contributing to the sanctuary, it reveals a richer existence beyond profit margins and market trends." Julian's expression softened. "That's not a bad realization to have. Try telling that to Eleanor and the board." "Ah, Eleanor." Julian's smile turned, knowing the just a board member who calls on weekends. "She's ambitious," Ethan explained, "and she's made it clear she sees a potential power couple in our future. And you don't." "I used to think it made sense," Ethan admitted. "Two people with similar goals, similar backgrounds, complementary business connections, a strategic alliance more than a union of hearts," Julian observed. "Exactly." Ethan leaned forward. "But now I yearn for something authentic, built on more than reciprocal benefit." Their eyes met, and for a moment neither spoke. The afternoon sun caught in Julian's curls, giving her an almost ethereal glow. Ethan had dated supermodels and socialites, people who spent fortunes on their appearance, but none had ever taken his breath away like Julian did in that simple linen shirt with no makeup and a few smudges of paint on her fingers from an art project with the residents. "Julian," a voice called, breaking the moment. They both turned to see Marcus approaching their table. "I thought that was you, Marcus." Julian greeted his brother, looking slightly embarrassed. "What are you doing here?" Meeting Sophia to discuss the sanctuary's summer festival, Marcus looked between them with a barely concealed smile. "But I see you're busy. Don't let me interrupt your coffee date." "It's just lunch," Julian said quickly. Marcus's knowing look made Ethan bite back a smile. Well, don't let me interrupt. Nice to see you again, Ethan. As Marcus walked away, Julian groaned. Sorry about that. Marcus has always had perfect timing for maximum embarrassment. I like your brother, Ethan said. He cares about you. Too much sometimes. Julian checked his watch. I should get going soon. I promised to help with the sanctuary's budget this evening. Budget problems? Ethan asked automatically. Nothing major. We're just trying to figure out how to fund the art supplies upgrade before summer really hits. He shook his head when he saw Ethan's expression. And no, that wasn't a hint for a donation. What if it's not a donation? What if it's just me helping with the budget? I'm good with numbers. Julian considered this. I suppose an extra pair of eyes wouldn't hurt, but no blank checks, Ethan. The sanctuary succeeds because the community invests not just money, but time and effort. I understand, Ethan said, and he meant it. I'll bring my calculator, not my checkbook. That evening, Ethan found himself in the sanctuary's tiny office. Really, just a corner of the storage shed, fitted with a desk and filing cabinet. Julian, Marcus, and Sophia Chen, the sanctuary's coordinator, spread out printouts of expenses and income. Our main issue is the art supplies, Sophia explained. The current system wastes materials and isn't reaching all the workshops evenly. We've got a quote for more efficient, sustainable paints and tools, but it's about $300, zero, over our current budget. Ethan reviewed the figures, impressed by how much they accomplished with so little. What about applying for a matching grant? If the community raises half a foundation might match it. We've looked into those, Marcus said. The application process takes months, and we need the supplies before the summer rush. What about a community fundraiser? Ethan suggested something that brings in quick cash, but also builds community involvement. Like what? Julian asked, curious. Ideas began flowing as they brainstormed together. By the end of the evening, they had a plan for an Art for All exhibition and auction event. Local artists would donate pieces, community members would pay for tickets, and they'd hold a silent auction for sanctuary-themed gift baskets. This could work, Sophia said excitedly. And Ethan, if you're willing to help organize the business side, approaching artists, handling the finances, that would be a huge help. I'd be happy to, Ethan said, surprised at how energized he felt by the project. After the meeting, Ethan walked Julian to his car. Thank you for letting me help, he said. You had good ideas, Julian admitted, and you didn't once try to just write a check, which I appreciate. I'm learning, Ethan said with a smile. Slow but steady progress. Under the soft glow of a streetlight, Julian looked up at him, her expression thoughtful. You know, when we first met, I thought you were just another rich guy who visited his grandmother out of obligation. I judged you without knowing you, and I'm sorry for that. And what do you think now? Ethan asked softly. Now I think there's a lot more to Ethan Blackwood than the CEO everyone sees. She hesitated, then rose on her tiptoes and kissed Ethan's cheek. Good night, Ethan. As he drove away, Ethan touched the spot where his lips had been feeling like a teenager after a first date. He was smiling all the way home. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. By day, Ethan managed Apex Innovations, paying special attention to the European expansion to appease the board. Evenings were split between visiting his grandmother and helping organize the sanctuary fundraiser. He approached gallery owners he knew, securing donations and support. The event was coming together quickly, scheduled for the weekend after the annual benefit gala. On Friday afternoon, Ethan was in his office reviewing contracts when his assistant announced an unexpected visitor. Julian, send her in, Ethan said, surprised and pleased. Julian entered, looking slightly uncomfortable in the opulent surroundings of the Apex. Innovations, executive floor. Sorry to drop in unannounced. I was downtown for a social work program interview and thought he trailed off, taking in the panoramic views from his office windows. Wow, quite the view. It's good to see you, Ethan said, genuinely happy for the interruption. How did the interview go? I think well, he said, still distracted by the office. This is not what I expected. Too corporate, Ethan asked, seeing his everyday environment through Julian's eyes. The sleek furniture, the modern art, the overall sense of wealth and power, just very different from my world, Julian said, echoing their earlier conversation. She noticed the photo on her desk, the old one of him with his grandmother. I like that you keep this here, a reminder of what matters, Ethan said. So, what brings you by? Actually, I wanted to talk to you about the gala. Julian took a deep breath. I've been thinking about your invitation, and if it's still open, I'd like to go with you. Ethan couldn't hide his surprise. Really? What changed your mind? Your grandmother. Actually, she told me it's an important event for you, and that supporting children's art is something I believe in too. He smiled shilly. And maybe I'm a little curious about your world. I'd be honored if you came, Ethan said, his heart beating faster. But I thought you were worried about not fitting in. Oh, I am still worried, Julian admitted with a laugh. I have no idea what to wear or how to act at something like that. But sometimes you have to step outside your comfort zone, right? Right, Ethan agreed, thinking of his first day at the sanctuary. And don't worry about fitting in. You'll be with me. As they were talking, the door opened without a knock, and Eleanor Thorne walked in. She stopped short when she saw Julian. I'm sorry, she said, not sounding sorry at all. I didn't realize you had a visitor. Eleanor, this is Julian Reed. Ethan introduced them. Julian Eleanor Thorne, one of our board members. Eleanor's eyes swept over Julian, taking in his simple shirt and natural hair with a barely concealed look of assessment. Oh, charming. Are you a new consultant? No, Julian said. I work at Serenity, Shaw's Haven. I take care of Ethan's grandmother. How noble, Eleanor said with a thin smile. Ethan, when you're finished, we need to discuss the seating arrangements for the gala. The mayor has confirmed his attendance. Actually, Ethan said, you should add Julian to the head table. She'll be my guest for the evening. Eleanor's smile froze. Your guest, but we always attend these functions together. The press expects it. Plans change, Ethan said firmly. Julian will be with me this year. After a tense moment, Eleanor nodded stiffly. As you wish. I'll make the adjustment. With a final cool look at Julian, she left, closing the door a bit harder than necessary. That was awkward, Julian said when Eleanor was gone. She clearly wasn't expecting me. Don't worry about Eleanor, Ethan said, though he knew there would be fallout to deal with later. She seemed upset, Julian persisted. Are you sure this is a good idea? I don't want to cause problems for you. The only problem would be if you changed your mind, Ethan assured her, taking her hand. I want you there. Julian, the rest doesn't matter. He squeezed Ethan's hand, still looking uncertain. If you're sure, I am. And in that moment, Ethan realized it was true. He wanted Julian by his side, not just at the gala, but in his life. The thought should have terrified him. He, who had kept everyone at arm's length for years, but instead it felt right natural. What he didn't know was that the evening ahead would test that certainty in ways he couldn't imagine and force him to choose between the world he had built and the woman who was changing his heart. The night of the annual benefit gala arrived with a flurry of activity. Ethan had offered to send a car for Julian, but he had insisted on driving himself, saying he wanted the option to leave early if he felt too uncomfortable. Ethan waited at the entrance to the Metropolitan Grand Hall, checking his watch anxiously. The red carpet was lined with photographers capturing the arrival of the city's elite. He had already fielded several questions about why he was standing outside rather than mingling inside. Just waiting for my date, he told them, with a smile that revealed nothing. When Julian's modest hatchback pulled up to the valet station, Ethan felt his heart skip. She stepped out tentatively, looking both beautiful and nervous in a simple dress that she later told her she had borrowed from her sister. Her curly hair was swept up elegantly, with a few tendrils framing her face. She wore minimal makeup, just enough to enhance her natural beauty. "You look stunning," Ethan said, taking her hand. "I feel like an imposter," Julian admitted quietly. "Everyone else arrived in limousines. You're the most genuine person here," Ethan assured him. "That's worth more than any limousine." As they walked, the red carpet cameras flashed. Ethan could hear the whispers. "Who is he? That's not Eleanor Thorne. Is that his new partner?" Inside, the ballroom was transformed into a glittering wonderland. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over tables adorned with elaborate floral arrangements. A string quartet played softly in the corner. Waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. "This is extravagant," Julian murmured, taking it all in. "How much did all this cost?" "The event raises over $1.5 million for children's art programs," Ethan said, hoping to impress him with the charitable goal rather than the opulence. "But how much of that sum actually reaches the beneficiaries after this spectacle?" Julian asked, his directness catching him off guard. It was a question Ethan had never considered before. "I don't actually know," he admitted. "I should find out." They were approached by Victor Ethan's CFO and his wife. "Ethan, there you are." Victor's gaze shifted curiously to Julian. "And you must be the mysterious date we've been hearing about." "Julian. Reed," she introduced herself, extending her hand with a composure that impressed. "Ethan, nice to meet you." "Julian works Serenity Shores," Ethan explained. "She takes care of my grandmother." "How interesting," Victor's wife said with the same tone Eleanor had used. "Is this your first gala, dear?" "Yes," Julian said simply. "It's quite an event." Julian also runs an urban sanctuary that provides creative outlets to families in need, Ethan added, feeling strangely defensive. "And he's starting social work school." "Wonderful," Victor said, clearly trying to be polite. "Well, we should circulate. The mayor was asking about you, Ethan. You might want to stop by his table." As they walked away, Julian gave Ethan a look. "You don't have to sell me to your friends, you know." "I'm not selling you. I'm proud of you," Ethan said honestly. "And their colleagues, not friends." "You don't have friends from work?" Julian asked, surprised. The question made Ethan realize something he'd never fully acknowledged. Not real ones, I guess. In this world, everyone wants something from everyone else. "That's sad," Julian said, squeezing his hand. "Everyone needs real friends." As the evening progressed, Ethan introduced Julian to countless business associates and donors. Some were genuinely friendly, but many gave him the same dismissive once-over that Elilana and Victor's wife had. Julian handled it all with grace, but Ethan could feel his tension. They were seated at the head table, as Ethan had insisted. Eleanor Thorne was there too, looking stunning in a crimson designer gown and deliberately seated far from Ethan. She barely acknowledged Julian, focusing her attention on the banking executive beside her. During dinner, the director of the Arts Foundation gave a presentation about the programs the gala supported. Photos of smiling children filled the large screens around the ballroom. "These are the faces of our future," the director said. "With your generous donations, we're able to provide after-school art programs, summer camps, and college scholarships to deserving students from underprivileged backgrounds." Ethan glanced at Julian, who was watching intently, his expression thoughtful. "What are you thinking?" she whispered. "I'm wondering if any of these kids come from my neighborhood," he said softly, "because I've never heard of these programs being available there." Again, his perspective made Ethan question something he'd always taken for granted. He made a mental note to look into the foundation's actual reach in the city's poorest areas. After dinner came the auction. Luxury items, exotic vacations, bespoke jewelry, rare wines, all were sold to the highest bidders, all in the name of charity. Ethan usually participated enthusiastically, but tonight, with Julian beside him, he felt strangely conflicted about the extravagance. And now, the auctioneer announced, our final item of the evening, an exclusive retreat at the Mountain Peak Spa Resort, including private jet transportation courtesy of Apex Innovations. Bidding was fierce, with the package eventually selling for $7,500 to a tech entrepreneur. The crowd applauded as the auctioneer declared the evening a tremendous success, raising over $1.5 million for the foundation. Time for dancing, Ethan said, as the string quartet was replaced by a small orchestra. Would you honor me? Julian hesitated. I'm not much of a ballroom dancer. Neither am I, honestly, Ethan confessed. I just go through the motions at these things, but I'd like to hold you for a while if that's okay. His smile returned. When you put it that way. On the dance floor, Ethan held Julian close, swaying gently to the music. It felt utterly right having him in his arms, more right than anything had felt in years. Thank you for coming tonight, he murmured into his hair. I know this isn't your scene. It's been educational, Julian said diplomatically. Ethan laughed softly. That bad, huh? Not bad, just different. She looked up at him. Everyone is so consumed by outward show. The right clothes, the right connections, saying the right things. It's draining. I'd been oblivious before. I never noticed before, Ethan admitted. It's just always been my world. And now I see it through your eyes, and it looks hollow. He pulled him closer. You've redefined my entire perception, Julian. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the crowded ballroom faded away. Ethan leaned down slowly, giving him time to pull away if he wanted. Instead, Julian rose on her tiptoes, meeting her halfway. Their lips touched in a soft, tender kiss that sent warmth spreading through Ethan's entire body. When they parted, Julian's eyes were wide with emotion. I wasn't expecting that, he whispered. I've wanted to do that for weeks, Ethan admitted. The moment was interrupted by a tap on Ethan's shoulder. He turned to find Eleanor Thorne standing there, her smile tight. Sorry to interrupt, but the mayor is leaving and wants to speak with you before he goes. She said, It's important, Ethan, about the downtown development project. Ethan hesitated, looking at Julian. Go ahead, Julian said. I'll get some air on the terrace. Reluctantly, Ethan left him, following Elilana across the ballroom. The conversation with the mayor took longer than expected, extending into discussions with other business leaders who had been waiting to speak with Ethan. By the time he extricated himself, nearly 30 minutes had passed. He hurried to the terrace, but Julian wasn't there. A quick search of the ballroom didn't reveal him either. With growing concern, Ethan checked his phone and found a text message. Had to leave. Not feeling well. Enjoyed meeting your friends. Thank you for including me, Julian. The formal tone worried him. He tried calling him, but the call went straight to voicemail. Frustrated, Ethan headed for the exit, only to be stopped by Victor. So soon. There are still some investors who want to discuss the European expansion. It'll have to wait, Ethan said firmly. I need to go. Your date left, didn't she? Eleanor appeared beside Victor. I saw her rushing out earlier. She looked upset. Something in Eleanor's tone made Ethan suspicious. What did you say to him? Me? Nothing, Eleanor said innocently. We just had a little girl talk while you were busy. I was being friendly. What kind of girl talk? Ethan demanded. Eleanor sighed. Look, I just told him the truth, that these charity events are important networking opportunities for the company and that your family has certain expectations for who you'll eventually settle down with. I merely hinted at our shared past in the board's long-standing preference for us as a suitable pair. He deserved to know what he was getting into. Fury rose in Ethan's chest. You had no right. I was doing you a favor, Eleanor insisted. She has no place in your world, Ethan. She was wearing a borrowed dress, for God's sake. Everyone was talking about it. I don't care what anyone was talking about, Ethan snapped. Julian's integrity outweighs the collective worth of this entire room. He stormed out, leaving. Eleanor and Victor staring after him. In the parking lot, he realized he had no clue where Julian resided. He'd always met him at Serenity Shores or the Sanctuary. Cursing himself for this oversight, he drove to the Sanctuary, hoping he might have gone there to clear his head. The Sanctuary was locked and dark. Next, he tried Serenity Shores, but the night attendant told him Julian hadn't been there. In desperation, Ethan called Marcus. "It's nearly midnight," Marcus answered, groggy. "This better be important. It's Ethan. I need to find Julian." Something happened at the gala, and she left without saying goodbye. Marcus was immediately alert. "What did you do?" "Nothing. At least I don't think. I did anything. We were dancing and we kissed, and then I had to speak with some people, and when I came back he was gone." "You kissed him?" Marcus sounded surprised but pleased. "Wait then, why would he leave?" "Eleanor talked to him while I was gone. Eleanor is complicated. She said some things about me and her and about Julian not belonging in my world." Marcus groaned. "Oh, perfect. Let me guess. This Eleanor is beautiful, rich, and exactly the kind of woman everyone expects you to be with." "Something like that," Ethan admitted. "And did you and Eleanor ever?" "No. Well, there was one kiss at a New Year's party years ago, but it meant nothing." Ethan ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "I just need to talk to Julian, please, Marcus." Marcus sighed. "She's probably at home. He lives in the apartment above mine, too. Do you have a pen?" Ethan scribbled down the address Marcus gave him, thanked him, and drove across town to a modest apartment building in Julian's neighborhood. It was well after midnight when he knocked on his door. For a long moment, there was no response. Then he heard soft footsteps and Julian's voice. "Who's there?" "It's Ethan." "Julian, please. I must speak with you." The door opened a few inches, revealing Julian in pajamas, her hair loose around her shoulders. She'd been crying. "It's very late," she said quietly. "I know, and I'm sorry, but I couldn't leave things like this. Can I come in just for a minute?" After a hesitation, Julian opened the door wider. Her apartment was small but cozy, filled with books, plants, and colorful art. It felt warm and inviting, like Julian herself. "Why did you leave?" Ethan asked without preamble. Julian sat on her small sofa, pulling her knees up to her chest. "I didn't belong there." "Ethan, your associate Eleanor made that abundantly clear." "Eleanor is not my friend," Ethan said firmly, "and whatever she told you." "She didn't tell me anything I didn't already know," Julian interrupted. "She just confirmed it. You and I come from different worlds. Everyone at that gala saw it. The way they looked at me like I was some curiosity you'd brought along." "I don't care what they think," Ethan insisted. "But you should. That's your world, Ethan. Those are the people you do business with, the social circles you move in." Julian looked up at him, her eyes sad. Eleanor said, "The executives anticipate you'll eventually wed someone like her, someone who can enhance the corporate image. The board has no say in matters of my heart." Ethan said, the words slipping out before he could consider their implications. Julian's eyes widened. "Love, Ethan. We barely know each other." "I know enough," Ethan said, sitting beside her and taking her hand. "I know that when I'm with you, I feel more alive than I have in years. I know that you see the real me, not just the CEO or the billionaire. And I know that kissing you tonight felt like coming home." Tears filled Julian's eyes. "I feel the same way," she admitted softly. "But feelings aren't always enough. What happens when the novelty wears off? When you realize that my world of care homes and community art projects can't compete with galas and boardrooms? What if I confessed I no longer desire that existence?" Ethan asked. "At least not the way it is now. Tonight, watching you question things I've always taken for granted, like how much of that charity money actually reaches children in neighborhoods like yours, it made me realize how disconnected I've become." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to change things. Leverage Apex innovations to enact genuine change, not merely sign checks for lavish events. Ethan squeezed her hand. And I want you beside me while I do it. Not because you fit into my world, but because together we can create something better. Julian looked skeptical. Your board would never allow that. Eleanor made it clear they have plans for the company and for you. Let me worry about the board, Ethan said. Right now, I just need to know if you're willing to give us a chance, a real chance, despite our differences. For what felt like an eternity, Julian studied her face. Then, slowly, she nodded. I want to believe this can work. Ethan pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. That's all I need to hear. The next morning, Ethan arrived at Serenity Shores earlier than usual. He found his grandmother in the garden practicing with her walker. You're getting good at that, Ethan commented. Practice makes perfect, Eleanor said cheerfully. How was the gala did? Julian enjoy himself? It was educational, Ethan said using Julian's word. Grandma, I need your advice. For the next hour, Ethan poured out everything his feelings for Julian, the board's concerns about his leadership, Eleanor Thorne's interference, and his growing desire to change the company's direction. I've been running Apex. Innovation's the way I thought it should be run, Ethan concluded, focusing on growth and profit above all else. But what if there's a better way? Elilana smiled, her eyes twinkling. I've been waiting years for you to ask that question. What do you mean? When I started the company, it wasn't just about making money. It was about making a difference in our community. Eleanor patted Ethan's hand. Your grandfather always declared a venture's true value lies in its benevolent impact, not solely its fiscal returns. But the board serves at the discretion of the principal shareholder. Eleanor interrupted. Which dear boy is you? They've forgotten that. Ethan stared at his grandmother, realization dawning. You're right. I don't need their approval. I just need to remember why the company exists in the first place. And as for Julian, Eleanor continued, she reminds me so much of your mother. She never cared about status or wealth either. She just wanted to make the world better, one person at a time. I think I'm in love with her grandma, Ethan admitted. I know you are, Eleanor said with a satisfied smile. I knew it the first time I saw you looking at her. You had the same look I had when I first met your grandfather. With renewed determination, Ethan spent the next week preparing for a special board meeting he had called. He worked late into the nights, researching, planning, and making calls to key allies. Julian supported him throughout, offering perspective and ideas as he crafted his vision for the company's future. The morning of the board meeting, Ethan stood before his mirror, adjusting his tie. He looked the same on the outside, successful, confident in control, but inside, everything had changed. You ready for this? Julian asked from the doorway of her bedroom. She had stayed overnight for the first time, and seeing her there in one of Ethan's shirts, hair tousled from sleep, made his heart swell. As ready as I'll ever be. Ethan kissed her softly. Thank you for believing in me. The boardroom was tense when Ethan arrived. All 10 members were present, including Eleanor Thorne, who sat with a cool, confident expression. Victor. Sterling looked nervous, darting glances between Eleanor and Ethan. Thank you all for coming, Ethan began. I've called this special meeting to discuss the future direction of Apex Innovations. Before you begin, Eleanor interrupted. The board has its own agenda item. She nodded to Victor, who reluctantly slid a document across the table to Ethan. What's this? Ethan asked, though he could guess. A vote of no confidence, Elilana said smoothly. The board feels your recent distractions have compromised your ability to lead this company effectively. We are proposing a temporary transition of power to the executive committee while we search for a new CEO. Ethan looked around the table. Some board members couldn't meet his eyes, while others looked resolute. I see, Ethan said calmly. Well, before we vote on that, I'd like to introduce a guest. He walked to the door and opened it. Please welcome Eleanor Vance, founder of this company. His grandmother entered slowly, using her walker but standing as tall as her 85 years would allow. The board members murmured in surprise. "Eleanor, it's been too long," one of the older members said, rising to offer his hand. "We didn't expect you today." "I wouldn't miss it," Elilana said. "My grandson has some important things to say, and I wanted to be here to support him." Ethan returned to the head of the table. "As I was saying, we're here to discuss the future of Apex. Innovations, but not the way you might think." For the next hour, Ethan presented his vision, a restructuring that would maintain profitability while significantly increasing the company's investment in sustainable practices and community development. He proposed creating a new division focused specifically on affordable housing and education initiatives in underserved communities. "This isn't charity," Ethan emphasized. "It's smart business for the long term. Studies show that companies with strong social responsibility outperform their peers over time." As he spoke, he could see the division in the room. Some board members were intrigued while others, led by Elilana Thorne, remained skeptical. "This is a radical departure from our core mission," Eleanor objected when he finished. "And it comes suspiciously soon after you started dating someone from a very different background. The board has to wonder if your discernment is swayed by personal attachments." "My judgment is being influenced by values," Ethan corrected her. "Values that this company was founded on but has strayed from." "Exactly right," Eleanor spoke up. "When I built Apex Innovations, it wasn't just to make money, it was to make a difference. Somewhere along the way, that purpose got lost. Eleanor Thorne wasn't backing down. With all due respect, Eleanor, the business world has changed since your day. Sentiment doesn't drive shareholder value. Actually, it does." Ethan countered, displaying a series of charts. "Entities prioritizing social good consistently surpass market expectations. But more profoundly, it is the honorable path." Elilana shook her head. "This is exactly why we've prepared the no-confidence vote. Your priorities have clearly shifted away from what's best for this company." "I think it's time to vote," Ethan said calmly. "Not on your motion, but on mine. As the majority shareholder, I'm exercising my right to reconstitute the board to resonate with the company's refreshed trajectory." The room fell silent. Elilana's confident expression faltered. "You can't do that," she said. "The bylaws protect the board's independence." "Actually, he can." "Eleanor," Vance spoke up. "I wrote those bylaws myself. The majority shareholder has always had the final say. That's how I wanted it, to ensure the company never lost sight of its values." One by one, Ethan asked each board member if they supported his vision for the company's future. Some said yes, immediately seeing the wisdom in his approach. Others hesitated, but ultimately agreed, not wanting to oppose the majority shareholder. Eleanor Thorne and two of her closest allies refused. "Then I thank you for your service," Ethan said to the three denters. "But it's time for Apex Innovations to move in a new direction, with leadership that shares our values." After the meeting, Elilana squeezed Ethan's shoulder. "Your grandfather would beam with pride," she said, her eyes misty. "And so do I." 3 months later, the Urban Sanctuary Summer Festival was in full swing. What had started as a small fundraiser for the art supplies had grown into a community celebration with food stalls, music, and activities for children. Local businesses had donated goods and services for an auction, and the mayor had even made an appearance. Ethan stood by the newly installed art stations, watching children enthusiastically creating, enjoying the cool mist from sprinklers set up as a special treat on the hot summer day. Julian approached, carrying 2 glasses of homemade elderflower cordial. "I just checked on your grandmother," she said, handing him a glass. "She's holding court by the poetry corner, telling everyone about how she used to write prize-winning sonnets in her younger days. Is she getting tired? I can take her home if she needs to rest." "Are you kidding? She's having the time of her life. Marcus has him judging the spoken word contest next." Ethan laughed, putting his arm around Julian's waist. "I've been thinking," he said casually, "that empty lot next to the sanctuary, the one that's been for sale forever. I bought it yesterday." Julian turned to him in surprise. "You did what?" "Why? For the sanctuary's growth. We've been talking about the educational wing, the ceramic studio, the community kitchen. It's all possible now." Tears filled Julian's eyes. "Ethan, I don't know what to say. Say you'll help design it all. All of it. Make it exactly what the community needs." He took Julian's hands in his. "And say you'll marry me." Julian's eyes widened. "What?" Ethan knelt down right there in the sanctuary, not caring about the dirt staining her jeans. From her pocket, she pulled out an understated ring featuring a beautifully cut, ethically sourced sapphire. "Julian Reed, you've taught me what truly matters in life. You've shown me that the wealthiest individual isn't defined by their assets, but by the richness of their affection. Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down Julian's face as she nodded. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will." As Ethan slipped the ring on her finger, cheers erupted around them. The sanctuary volunteers, community members, and even Eleanor, who had somehow made her way over with surprising speed for an old woman with a walker, all clapped and whistled. "I told you she'd say yes," Eleanor said triumphantly, "just like your grandfather did to me right in that cafe all those years ago." Later that evening, as the festival wound down, Ethan and Julian sat on a bench beneath the sanctuary's oldest oak tree. The setting sun cast a golden glow over the thriving project, and the happy faces of the community members still lingering. "What made you finally decide?" Julian asked, leaning against his shoulder. "To change the company, to buy the lot, to propose all of it?" Ethan thought about it, watching. Eleanor chatting animatedly with Marcus and some of the older sanctuary volunteers. "I realized that all my life I've been trying to build something that would last, a business empire that would be my legacy. But what good is a legacy if it doesn't make the world better?" He turned to face her, taking in her beautiful face now so dear to him. "You illuminated that true affluence isn't accumulated possessions, but bestowed kindness. And genuine love isn't a commodity to be purchased or attained, but a profound connection to be mutually shared." Julian cooped his face in his hands. "For a tech mogul, you're pretty wise," she teased, then kissed him softly. As the stars began to appear above them, Ethan held the woman he loved in his arms, surrounded by the community that had become his own. For the first time in his life, Ethan, Blackwood, felt truly, completely rich with the one thing his money could never buy: a heart full of love freely given. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.